Welcome back to Lucid Living. And if this is your first time, welcome, welcome. I'm so happy to have you aboard. My name is Andrew Larkin. I'm an actor, model, performer, storyteller, breathwork coach, and today I'm going to be your host, your guide for today's podcast episode. All right, my friends. So, if you've been following along on this journey through this podcast, we've been having a lot of heavy hitters guests on, and it's been so just fulfilling to be able to have these great conversations with my fellow peers. But today we have a bit of a different conversation that we're going to dive into with an amazing, amazing guest, and I'm so excited to dive into this. But before we introduce this new guest, we're going to do some nice grounding parasympathetic breath work. So that's going to be a 4-2-6 count. So we're going to do this for 3 rounds. And as we inhale, we're going to inhale through the nose, expand our belly like you're filling up a nice big water balloon. Hold at the top for 2. And then we're going to exhale out the mouth. The belly's going to come back to your center. And that's going to be a 6 count. We're going to do that 3 times. And remember, as we exhale longer than our inhale, we channel the parasympathetic nervous system, which is that rest and digest, and just calms the nervous system down to be able to move with a little bit of a quiet little stillness and mindfulness throughout the day. So take this moment, tap into the body. And let's begin by inhaling through the nose in 3, 2, 1. Big inhale through the nose. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2. Exhale out the mouth. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale through the nose. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2. Exhale out the mouth. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Last one. Inhale through the nose. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2. Exhale out the mouth. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Wiggle the toes, wiggle the fingertips. Bring some energy back into the body. My friends, today, I'm so excited. Today we have a former therapist, an industry mental wellness coach, a social worker, an Enneagram coach. I hope I said that right. And a mother, and not just a mother, but a mother of one of the stars of heavy hitters, and is such an amazing human being. We have Kim Rapach. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrew.
Oh, gosh,
I'm
I'm
so
so
excited to be here.
Thank you, thank you. All right, Kim. So first, we always start off with the present moment. So where are you geographically right now, and then how are you feeling in this particular season of life?
So I am in the Chicagoland area. I'm in the suburbs. So it's gloomy and well, actually, it's a little sunny, but in our winter season, ready for spring. Everybody's done with the coats and the gloves and the hats, and we're running out in shorts when it's 34 degrees because it's 2 degrees above freezing. So
Hmm.
in the past, this season really would tank my mental health. And so I'm excited every year where I am still standing strong, still happy, still grateful, and still feeling well. And that's taken a lot of work. But yeah, I just think it's important to note sometimes this year, really regardless of where you live, but especially if it gets gloomy, it's really important to take extra care of yourself. So I'm in Chicago and I have my own podcast too, as you know. It's called The Work of Warriors, and it's one of my favorite projects. I had no idea how much I would love it. I've just felt like, I have these conversations in private, and they're so profound with artists about mental health and mental wellness. And it's really important for me as a mental wellness coach. I'm passionate about moving away from the idea of illness to wellness. I think so many people, myself included, who've been diagnosed with a mental illness diagnosis is because of their experiences and because of lack of tools. And so, if you can teach people to understand their story, their experiences, how they live in their body, and give them the tools to fight for themselves and to be free, um, they get to experience emotional freedom, which is what I've had. So that podcast, I have conversations with artists. We talk about mental wellness. We talk about experiences. We bring hope to people who are still feeling like they're the only one, or that there's something wrong with them, or that they're in the dark. And it's just a lot of fun. And then also my main gig is I am a mental wellness coach. And so I work with artists, entrepreneurs. I work with some executives who are naturally driven, so what you might call your high achiever. I think we're all high achievers. But what they're very passionate about their career, and they've had a level of success, but mentally or emotionally or relationally or even spiritually, they're still struggling. And so my favorite person to work with is someone who has had success and then said, that's it. I'm still not happy. And then we go back and we go back to the roots and we dig it up and we recreate what we want. And yeah, it's a great honor to get to help people learn how to thrive emotionally, just like they do in their career.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited for this conversation because you are just full of so much knowledge and understanding and have been and a testament to doing the work as well. And also I feel like the audience because it's so aligned with me of surrounding myself with artists and then also in the wellness space and in the health space and in the growth space and you touch on all of that. So I'm so excited to dive into this. Now I always ask everyone in the beginning, this is a very generalized question. You can take this in any direction that you'd like because it's a loaded question. But I always find when I connect with others, and I'm really bad at surface level conversations. I love kind of diving into the deep, and I always reflect on doing my own personal work. So much of who I am and how I move throughout the world came from childhood. It came from how I was raised, my influences and my surroundings. So I'm curious for what was childhood like for young Kim growing up, and then what are the kind of steps that were taken that led you down this very kind of particular path of not only just being an amazing mother, but also being a leader in the space, in the performance space, which is so necessary, and then also bringing wellness to this creative space. So if you want to share a little bit just about that kind of journey in your own words, I'd love to hear it.
Sure. Well, gosh, thank you for asking. I'm all about story. We all have one. We all come from somewhere, and I think it's so important. And so the fact that you're just naturally asking that and curious about that, it just gives me great hope, because you're a young person. And if I had this language probably at your age, things probably would have been a little easier. But so my childhood was pretty complex, pretty tricky. Um, Fun little story that is kind of baffling, but I mean, it's such a testimony. But my parents were divorced when I was like 6, and my dad had been married prior to that and had 3 kids. So he divorced his first wife, married my mom, had me. Then when my mom and dad got divorced, he remarried his first wife. And so much of my childhood was kind of feeling like I have a foot in two different worlds. My dad's family was very quiet and peaceful, and I had 3 siblings, and there's a whole bunch of stories there, but it was a very different world. At my house with my mom, she was married a total of 3 times, and she and her family, my family of origin, lots of drug abuse, lots of alcoholism, lots of violence, rage, domestic violence. I myself am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And so I have complex trauma. And that essentially led me to creating, I mean, I literally created a business on how to take care of people. Because as a child, I learned to read the room. I learned to read people's emotions. I knew, how to walk on eggshells when I needed to. And I learned how to not to ask for help. And so, even in community college, people would call me the community counselor. And then everywhere I went, people were drawn to me. And I think it's, our energy speaks to each other. And I myself was just trying to find my purpose and what is the point and why am I here? And so I literally created a career, went to school for social work, psychology. I loved my very first psychology class. I just ate it up. Social work. Went on to create a 6-figure therapy business. I was a very good therapist, loved it very much. I thrived in that space. And then throughout that experience, I learned that I'm also an entrepreneur and I have a gift and I always want to do, the next big thing. And I want to create things and I want to help people. And I want to do things different than the way they've been done. And so, but what happened gosh, right around 2020, we all know what the world looked like then. But about that time, when everything changed and we went to screens. As a therapist, I took I say in air quotes, I took care of myself. I had my little checklist. I did the things I needed to do. So I thought. But when the world was upside down, I found myself for the first time ever sharing in a collective trauma. So, what I was experiencing, my clients were experiencing. It was no longer this like, okay, I've walked a few steps ahead of you. I can help you. It's, I'm in this too. And so I realized I really still had such an unhealed part of me that wanted to heal others. And I started to slip and lose myself and really entered a very dark season with my own mental health. And it was frustrating because I was a therapist. I had been here before. I had done so much work. I had been to therapy. I had done medication. And it was like, it's just a return to self. It's a time to return to myself once again. And I was looking at my clients who I was now seeing on screens, and, everybody had a different opinion. Some people thought it was BS, and some people thought they were going to die. And it was like mental ping pong. And again, I'm just kind of quickly slipping in my own mental health. And I just had a kind of a come to Jesus moment of I've never felt this close to being suicidal. I've never felt this close to wanting to end my life as I do now. And I'm looking at my clients, and some of them are thriving and they're creating new businesses and they're learning how to play new instruments and they're using tools that I taught them. Right. And so this come to Jesus moment was this is a full stop. This is a full stop. I no longer abandon myself for anyone else, which is what I learned to do when I was like 4. Right. And so I don't do that anymore. And what does that look like? The gyms weren't open. I found a hill to go climb. I, told my family, like, this is it. This is where I shift. And it was aggressive. As I look back, it was aggressive. It was like, this is how it's going to be for me. I'm taking care of myself and y'all can join me or not. It was probably not the softest approach, but that's where I was. And I made a commitment to myself that I would fight for myself first, no matter what. And I had a child that, is my everything. It's like, no, me first.
Mhm.
I adore my husband. I'm so grateful for him. He's the safest person on the planet for me. It's like, nope, me first. And guess what? When I learned to take care of myself really first, no matter what, when I learned better boundaries and I learned to say no and I allowed myself to have my yeses, my relationships got better. I left the medical model of therapy. I looked at what was working and what wasn't. And I left everything about the traditional medical model of therapy that didn't work, at least for me, like leaving clients in tears because you have another session because you only get 53 minutes. I don't do that anymore. I have about 90-ish minutes that I set aside for every client. I don't stack my clients back to back. I don't have multiple clients a day because it's not good for me and it's not good for them. And I feel like it was traumatizing. So I say that because I left what wasn't working and then I took everything that was the tool, the Enneagram, which is a personality integrative tool to help people understand their story, their patterns, their core fears, their core desires. Definitely took that with me. Um, Mental wellness, just the physical wellness piece, took that with me. A flexible schedule. And I created a system in my now coaching business where I get to have a flexible schedule and my clients have like a high level of access to me, but I don't serve a lot of clients at one time so that I'm more available. But it also allows me to make sure that I'm in a physical and mental space to be able to answer that call, to be able to answer that text without abandoning myself. And if I do start to feel like, ugh, I start to feel a little irritated or dysregulated, I know that's a me thing. That's on me. Nobody is causing that but me. I'm in control of my schedule. I'm in control of my yeses and my nos, and I'm in control of how I feel. And so, yeah, that's kind of a long-winded answer to your question of what was childhood like and where did it lead. But that's the fast track version, I guess.
That is a beautiful, beautiful answer. And you're a living example of standing up for yourself and creating the life that you desire. And I think a lot of people can go through what you've been through and live in that victim state. And as everything is happening to you, and it can be, it's so overwhelming to and I can't even like put myself in that position to understand what that is going through. But it was almost like God chose you to like go through that to be able to turn. There's this quote that some coaches that I listen to say where you turn your mess into your message. And it's like you were born to do this work, and step into this space. And it's such an inspiring, like that story was just so inspiring, because for anyone who thinks they're at that rock bottom moment, like you can always take your life back, say no, say yes to yourself, and advocate for yourself and fight for the life that you want to live. And so, again, amazing, because we talked about this before about filling your own cup up first, and I really want to highlight that, because especially people pleasers and givers, a lot of times we're giving so much that we actually have less to give because we're not giving to ourselves. So you're just such a living example, such a role model. Wish I had you in my life when I was younger, but I'm so
Thank
blessed to have
you. I
you.
mean, it took me a minute to get here, and I spent a lot of years in that victim mentality.
Mm,
And I did a lot of unnecessary suffering
mm,
until I woke up. So I'm grateful for what happened in 2020 and, being in that dark space. And I had a choice and I chose well. I chose me. And I just feel like it is my purpose to help people choose themselves. I thought that if I worked hard and if I helped everybody, and the more people, it's just like anything else, the more people I helped, it wasn't enough. I still wasn't satisfied. And
mm,
so many people in the industry are hustling and grinding and running. And they're successful. They're getting the gigs, they're getting the auditions, they're getting the awards, they're getting the accolades, they're getting the invites. But when they go home at night, they're still the same person and they're still unhappy. And that's really, really dangerous. I think it's Rick Rubin who talks about it. When you go and put your heart and soul into something for 20 years, but you're not taking care of you and you're not taking care of your mental health, and then you get that big, you achieve that big BHAG goal, and then you go home at night and you're like, wait, that's it? That's dangerous. And that's, I think, what happened to me. Like, I'm helping everybody and I am miserable and I'm suffering. And
mm,
so my heart and yeah, my heart is just for those who are trying to outwork their story or their trauma.
yeah.
So it doesn't work. I'm
Hmm.
testimony to that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you can, again, going through what you went through, you can connect with your clients so much more than someone who's living a perfect life,
Yeah.
whatever that even looks like. I'm curious, growing up, and it sounded like you almost found the thing pretty early on, whether that was high school or college, going to study to be a social worker, to be in therapy. Did you have mentors along the way, that kind of guided you down this path? Or also it sounded like this was just such a natural thing where people came to you and it was almost like, again, like a God-given gift. But I'm curious if you had people that helped shape you throughout that journey of like high school to college and then after college and even now.
Yeah, that's a great question. When I look back on my life, I see different people who are plopped into my story. And they're just like little characters, right? Like I didn't know at the time how powerful it was, but I would have like that community table at community college where like, you're like our therapist, you're like our community counselor. And I'm like, what? Like my life's a mess, right? But they were calling out, like, when I look back now, I see that they saw a gift in me that I didn't yet see in myself. And they were just droplets of people like that. I had a friend who helped me figure out how to get into college. I was never going to go to college. I grew up in a trailer at the end of a dirt road, and college just statistically was not going to happen for me. But I had people who came along and like, you know what, I'll fill out your application for you. Just come with me. Okay, whatever. Like a lot of my life in my late teens, early 20s kind of happened like that. Like it was other people who maybe weren't officially mentors, but they were, because that's who the universe sent me. And then I had a supervisor. I worked at a um, residential treatment facility for children who were wards of the state. And that was a really tough job. There was a lot of violence, and it was super hard, and I was super young. But I had a supervisor who said, you'd be a great social worker. And I'm like, what? What? Okay. And then I had a friend that I worked with at that treatment center, and she's like, I'm filling out my grad school applications. And there I was. Okay, well, maybe I'll fill out a grad school like really just kind of fumbling. I wasn't like this driven, like, yes, I want to go to college. It's my dream. It was other people. So ironically, and this is coming up just as we're talking about it, like you can be in a codependent stance. Like I have it at my core, a codependent nature. Again, I learned how to take care of other people first. And so in a way, that's also like it's like the universal law of opposites or whatever that's called. But also I leaned in and was like, well, I could do that too then. Right. So as much as it hurt me, it also helped me. And I went to grad school for social work and fell in love with it. And yeah, just different people throughout, supervisors, especially that supervisor, his name was Brian, who just saw a gift in me. And it just seems to be that way all along the way.
Mhm. It's
And for a
amazing.
long time, I fought it. People would say, like, you have a gift. I'm like, oh, whatever. And now when people say, like, you have a gift, I'm just like, oh, thank you. Thank
Mhm.
you. That means a lot.
How, because this is a journey that I've constantly been navigating, the concept of receiving. How have you been with I mean, talking about right there of just someone giving you a compliment, being able to say thank you instead of kind of brushing it off. Um, how did you always did you struggle with that at all when you were younger?
Yeah, and I'm smiling because I just feel like the synergy and the energy in this conversation right now, like you're asking just questions are like, oh my gosh, how did you know? Right? Like, how did you
Mhm.
know? So I worked prior to having my own therapy practice, I worked for a different therapy practice. And I was insecure. I used to joke like, oh, I feel bad for the people who get me because I'm so new and I was so intimidated to go into a private room with a stranger and believe at all that I had the ability to help them. Right. And so it was intimidating. And again, I had a supervisor who was like, you are teachable, you have a fun personality, you have a sense of humor, and you have compassion and you have gifts to give people. And I remember thinking, and I think I even asked him, like, how do you know? Like, you're not in the room with me. And he's like, I know because I know you. I don't have to be in the room with you to see what I see. And that day was a pivotal point in my career because I stood in this, little therapy room by myself and told myself, if I'm going to be successful, if I'm going to be able to help people, I have to believe that God puts people in my path that, people don't just give out empty compliments. Usually, like we live in a world where we like to tear each other down. So if someone's going to go out of their way and say, you really helped me, or you're really good at this, it is my work to say, thank you. I don't have to understand it. I just have to choose to believe it, that they are seeing something. And so that changed everything for me.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, it's almost like a pay it forward kind of situation where for some reason it takes someone else to see the light in you for you to allow yourself to see the light in you. And then when you start living in that, you realize the gift of a smile. You realize the gift of a small compliment, but like an authentic, heartfelt compliment, because you can feel it when it's not authentic and it's not coming from the heart and someone's trying
Yep.
to get something in return from it. But the world can use more of it, and it's really cool. It's really cool. Um,
Yeah.
I want to learn a little bit because I think entrepreneurship is such a beautiful thing, especially in today's day and age. Hearing about 2020, so much disruption in all industries, and realizing that you can take your own power back. And I was doing some courses where it was like a huge entrepreneur who was teaching people you have a very specific set of skills that someone will pay money to learn and like learn how to do, and everyone just started starting their own businesses because a lot of people have these amazing gifts and amazing knowledge and wisdom and that they can be of service. How was that transition from being in kind of that corporate space where you're given the structure, to saying I mean the personal mindset I know you touched on of just being worthy enough to be able to start your own business and be your own boss and set your own hours. But then also the technological aspect of how do I gain clients and leads? Like, did you take some of your clients that were from the work and they came to you for your own business? But how did the and your business is it's so cool, all the work that you're doing and all the things that you offer. So what was that transition from kind of going from corporate into entrepreneurship look like?
Sure. So I was a social worker, so I worked in domestic violence shelters, counseling centers, that sort of thing. And then when I did private practice with another therapy practice, I left that practice to be home with my son, and I was teaching online. And so I was making money just teaching from the couch, and I was teaching, and I love that. And probably a year after that, I was like, I really miss being in the room. I miss having clients. And it was like, could I do this? Like, I don't know that I want to go back and work for somebody else. Could I do this? What would that look like? And so I decided I would open my own therapy practice, and I would get a little tiny office, and it didn't have to be anything fancy. And I would just try it out. And I was scared. I was intimidated. I was insecure. And it was all nerve-wracking. But I remember I kind of told myself, like, if I do this for 6 months and it doesn't work out and I have to close my doors, then that just means I got to do my dream job for 6 months. And I just started shifting my perspective. And I was, I think I cried. I was like, I don't understand insurance, and it was messy. Like, I don't want to make it sound like it was just all glamour. It was messy, um, but I was successful. And a couple clients that I had had at the previous practice found me, and really just started to build my practice slowly. I was still teaching online, and at the time, my husband and I were going through a debt-free journey. So finances are really important to me. And so I didn't pay myself for like a year and a half of having my own practice. And it was a lot of growth and a lot of change. And I'm raising a young son at the time. But it worked out really well. And then I had a client once, you asked me, like, have you had mentors? I had a client who had come to me for therapy. And I think it was his wife or his girlfriend or whatever had asked um, about being an entrepreneur. And I said, well, I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm a therapist. And they were like, what makes you think you're not an entrepreneur? And I was like, well, I don't sell anything. I don't, I mean, I'm just a therapist. And they were both entrepreneurs. And so they saw in me and they're like, you got us here. How did you get us here? And I'm like, we had a conversation. And they're like, yeah, and we're here. Hate to tell you, but you're an entrepreneur. And it just like, I remember just being like, it stuck with me for weeks. Like, what does that even mean? And then I had this season of like, oh, I'm really passionate about leadership and I want to help other people be therapists, and brought on a few therapists that worked in my practice. That was really, really exciting, but also really, really challenging. And I realized not something I really wanted to do. And I ended up selling my practice to one of my clinicians that I'm still friends with today. And it's still to this day, like the therapist or the therapy practice that I built and that I created um, is thriving. It's thriving under new ownership. And like I said, her name's Jennifer. We're still friends. And it was just this beautiful um, journey into, now she's an entrepreneur, and she's living out her dream. But I think it's again, it's been other people pouring into me, other people saying, I see this, you can do this. And I do just have something in my core. I look at I look at a lot of things and I go, I could do that. I could do that. I could do that better. I could do that. And so I have a natural flair for, I want to try that. Let's see how it goes.
Mm.
And I don't want to say it's easy. It's intimidating. And I catch myself every time, like, why am I doing this? Here we go. Kind of like with the podcast, but more often than not, I end up loving it. And so I don't know if I answered your question.
That was beautiful. That was great. Um, Yeah, no, I love that. I love that so much.
Okay.
Um, I wanna talk about motherhood a little bit. I don't know if like our demographic for this podcast is necessarily towards the mothers out there, but I do know that my mom is my number one listener all the time, number
Oh,
one supporter. So I'd love to hear just what was it like to step into motherhood, you know? You have life, you have your practice, and then you're gonna be a mom, and what was that feeling? The excitement, the fear, all the things, and then the journey of not just raising a son, but raising an artist. And we know Mac is an unbelievable artist and talented in so many different ways. But um, I guess for anyone listening who's like an actor who's like maybe would like share this with like their mom to be like, how do you, not recommend, but like, what was that journey like of being a mother to an artist?
so I mean, my son is going to be 20 this year. So it's been a 2 decade journey thus far. I knew, I just knew what I knew when I had him. He just had an energy about him. I didn't understand what it was at the time. So keep that in mind. I was 33. I just knew that everywhere we went, people flocked to us. Everywhere we went, people stared at him. Everywhere we went, everybody smiled at him. I mean, and I mean this with all sincerity, he really lit up the room everywhere we went. And I always just found myself going, I hope every parent feels about their child the way I feel about this one, because this is so special. Again, hard, challenging. Parenting is probably the hardest thing I've ever done. But when he was little, like 4, I don't know if he shared this story with you, but he was like, I want to be on TV. I want to, he'd look in a magazine going, how do I get my picture in here? And I knew. And so I really like throughout his beginning of like acting and stuff, I was always like, is this me or is this him? I don't know. Like, am I putting this on him? Is this genuine? Did I plant that seed? And I've just eventually just had to be like, it is what it is. And he's natural at this. So when he was 4 or 5, he's like, I want to be on TV. I want to be in a commercial. And I'm like, well, it just doesn't work like that, buddy. You can't just say you want it and happens. Well, little did I know because, and I was really scared. I mean, I grew up in the 80s. And so a lot of those kids were abused and they died by suicide and drug overdose. So I was like, I knew he had that gift, but also I was terrified because I felt like I can't have him harmed, right? And I was a survivor, and so I'm like, not on my watch. And so I was super helicopterish. Um, but a friend of mine called me out and she's like, who are you to tell him that he's too young to know what he wants? Because at the time I was like, I think it's irresponsible to let him act, and she's like, you don't have to take him to LA, like let him do Christian youth theater. And I was like, oh, I guess I could do that. But I think in the back of my mind, I knew it was going to get bigger. And so that's what we did. We did Christian youth theater and dropped him off. And I was like, do you want me to stick around and take pictures? Like I was that mom who wouldn't leave, right? Like making sure he's safe and okay. And then he came home from or he came out of the building after that first day of camp. It was a little Christian youth theater camp, and it had two little stickers. It was like number 16, and then a sticker that said Peter Pan. And I was like, well, what do those stickers mean? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, like, are you Peter Pan, or is this just because you're in Peter Pan? So we go back in, and I look at the teacher, and I'm like, and she's like, he's Peter Pan. I'm like, what? First time. And it just continued, and he just thrived everywhere he went. And we did some background work and some extra work, and that's super low pay for very long days. I'm working, I'm teaching. Imagine neighborhood in Chicago. I'm sitting on a curb on the street with my computer in my lap. I'm grading papers or teaching or whatever. And he's across the street. I can see him. I never let him go anywhere that I couldn't see him. Um, and he's with his set family, and they're screaming, and it's just this scene, and this went on all day. And I'm just like, this is I don't know what this is. This is wild. So on the way home, I was like, what do you think, buddy? I think it's about time to be done with this stuff because I was exhausted. And he was like, well, actually, I kind of want to be like the main person because he had done a little commercial where he was the main actor. And he's like when I was Henry, I want to be Henry. And I was like, okay, bro, if we're going to do this, you have to have an agent. You have to, I can't do this. It's just a lot of work. And I said, you know what? We're not going to submit to everybody. We're going to submit to the three most popular, like trustworthy agents in the area. And of course, he got a call back from all three of them. He ended up with, I mean, just, it was just like, of course, of course, of course. I was like, we're not paying for headshots. I'm going to do them myself. They were fine. And we just, I mean, and it's just been one thing, little success here and thereafter. But one thing I will say, as someone who survived, like, I don't know if I want to use the word survive, but who experienced abuse and wasn't safe, it was so important for me. So what we decided, and I tell all of my clients, all my parents of child talent, we decided if we were too busy to take him to an audition, we were too busy. And it was a no. My husband and I were the only ones who would take him to an audition because when your listeners know when you go into an audition, you have to go into a room. That was enough to rattle me. His first audition with an agent, we got turned down because he killed it. But they literally came out and said, Mom, Dad, he's great. He's got a gift, but you're not ready. Give it a couple years. And so that was when he was like 6. And so we waited until he was 8 because my husband and I both were just like, Mama, Papa Bear, like, and they're like, well, we have to like audition him. And we're like, we need to be there, and they're like, that's not how it works. And so we had to just wait until we found people we were comfortable working with and we felt he was safe. Um, so we said, if we're the only two that will take him to an audition, we're not hiring a nanny or not even grandma. Like when he goes into an audition room and comes back out, I need to read his energy and I need to know that he's okay. And so that was a really important value for me as a parent in the industry. And the other one was there's three of us. It's just me, my husband, and Mac. And so if there was an audition and one of us had a no for any reason, we didn't have to say why. A no for one was a no for all. And so if a script came along and, there was stuff that like I look back and I was probably just way too overprotective. I'm like, I don't want him saying the F word. He's 9, like,
Mm-hmm.
and, I mean, just stuff like projects now. I'm just like, man, that he auditioned for that, or he could have auditioned for that. But it just felt really important that we all felt safe in that process. And I was just really honestly terrified of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to put those values in place to know we are doing everything we can to protect him. And even then, you're protecting him from like his physical safety, but then like he booked a Disney commercial and then it was just so much drama and trauma at school because of the jealousy and teachers asking him, how much did you get paid for that? And, it's like you can't protect him from everything, but I feel very confident and comfortable and proud of us as a family for how we navigated parenthood in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's 20 and he's still an actor, but he's a filmmaker. And I feel like I'm really proud of him because I know the industry needs safe directors and safe producers and safe managers. And I feel like if that's where he continues, I don't have to worry about him taking advantage of people. I don't have to worry about him crossing the line. I know he knows his boundaries, for himself, but also for talent that, will choose to work with him. And I feel really proud of that. Um, in about 2021, 22, I really felt like all this time, of course, as a mother, it was my job to keep him safe, but it was so like Mac focused. Everything was Mac, keep Mac safe, da da da. And then it like dawned on me in like I said, 21, 22, where I'm like, oh my God, no, I have been being prepared for this work because I went to Nashville and I'm like, let's talk about mental health with artists in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
That come from.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, oh, I've been being prepared for 10 years for this. Again, of course, it was my job to keep him safe, but there was a bigger mission that I didn't know was coming. I thought it was mom. I didn't like the word momager, but mom of talent. And it just grew into so much more. And so, I mean, I have goosebumps as I think about it. It's just all feels very aligned.
Yeah, you were totally being guided. That's so amazing. And it's
Yeah.
a true testament because a couple of years ago, I started really listening to as many podcasts as I could about the industry. And there's this one actress, I don't even know if she acts anymore, but she played the voice of Kim Possible, and she was on Even Stevens, like amazing actor, and but she was a child actor, and she is kind of on a mission to help with legislation and rules around protecting child actors, and she brings on a bunch of child actors who were in the same era as she was, like growing up in the 90s and 2000s, and you see a lot of young actors go throughout the industry, get a certain level of acclaim, and they come out and there's so much darkness and pain, and it's a turn for the worst. And I truly think the people who came out with a good head on their shoulders were the ones who had the strongest parents, who were the most involved. And so it's a huge testament. It's amazing to hear that story because I didn't know um, that much about that. And I mean, just knowing Mac, being around Mac, the work absolutely paid off. And you're absolutely right. Like he really is truly going to create a safe environment for any set that he's on. And just his ability to communicate is it's incredible. So amazing stuff.
Thank
And
you.
I when did diving into, because you're talking about the alignment of starting off in having conversations with clients and helping them through therapy and through certain practices, and then diving into the lane of no more celebrity suicide. When did that come into your experience?
So in between like 2019 and or yeah, 2019 and 2020, I lost a client to suicide. And that was the beginning of where I think I started to just slowly lose myself into the darkness. And I don't, I mean, that's huge, right? That's a huge trauma. It's every therapist's worst nightmare. And it was something that, I thought I'll just never experience that. It won't happen. I'll make sure it doesn't happen. And losing that sense of false control, like it can happen. You're not in control of other people's lives. You're not in control of other people's mental health and their choices, but you are in control of your own. That was a huge shift in that era for me. And also, I have an internal angst about celebrity suicide. And I think it's just something that's just in me that I was created with, because it takes me out when I hear these stories. It puts me on the couch for people I've never met, right? And so that's while it's devastating, it hits me very deeply and very strongly. Probably also because I have a son who, up and down through the years as a parent, you worry like, how is he going to handle this? This is really hard. He's, got this trauma, whatever. And so a couple reasons, but also again, going back to like, we have these gifted artists, we put them in an industry that is toxic. I always say, like, we built the entertainment industry on quicksand, and then we have the audacity to judge them when they fall, right? And so you have this gifted artists who are bringing their whole life to the world in a public forum. The industry itself is unsafe, not the whole industry, but it's unsafe. It's full of toxic people who haven't done their work, who haven't worked out their own shit, and they have a position of authority. And then you have a vulnerable population of artists who are like, I just want to make it. I got to feed my family. This is what I know I'm supposed to do. And then they can get tripped up and like, okay, I'll just say yes, even though I don't want to. And that leads into a whole other slew of problems. And then again, then you have somebody who does make it, quote unquote, make it, and they're still not happy because we didn't set them up to succeed. We set them up to meet our needs. And with cancel culture, and we throw artists away like it's nothing. Like it just like even now I can just feel it. I just have so much passion for we have to create a better industry. So I mean, all of that, and then also we're raising a generation of youth to say, you need the likes, you need to go viral. Your worth, essentially, we don't come out and say, but your worth is tied to how many people watch your videos. And like, how confusing to an underdeveloped brain. And then you put them in an industry that's toxic, and then we wonder why we lose artists. And I just think we can do a lot better. I
Yeah.
know we can.
Yeah. It's amazing. And I mean, the work that you're doing is rippling down in so many different ways. But are there like what are the action steps to like do you think get the message across in the industry? Like how do we slowly start solving this problem?
Well, I think it starts with these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
We give people permission to find themselves, to love themselves, to take care of themselves, to learn boundaries. I always talk to young artists about the importance of your foundation. You have to know your values. You have to know what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. Because if you don't know before your success starts to take off, other people will make those decisions for you and you will lose yourself. I don't care how, and it doesn't matter how much money you make and how many millions of people love you. Because if you don't, what's the point of it all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's real. Identity. Ah.
So I think the conversations and then through therapy, coaching, teaching people the tools, teaching them things like the window of tolerance, things about their nervous system, understanding the way breath work actually works, teaching them, depending on where you're at mentally, you can shift your breath, and all of a sudden you have this instant power that we're just, it's why I love what you're doing because we don't talk about that.
Mm.
And it's not just taking a couple deep breaths. There's so much more science behind it, and it works, and it's free, and it's within you. But in addition to that, giving people tools and building communities. This year I'm going to be building a couple different containers of communities for young artists, and then even just a space for people who really want to dive into deeper work, to create a normalcy around the ebbs and flows of not only the entertainment center, but of your nervous system, and how to normalize that you're human and you're not broken and you're not bad. And there's, I like to say there's nothing wrong with you. You know, if you take care of yourself and you give your body what it needs and you have a community and you're working on your mission and you have boundaries, then if there's still struggles, well, then we can look at that. But like, let's take care of ourselves first before we just, I think our society has kind of shifted to like, I think we've disempowered a lot of people with the diagnosis of anxiety. It's a real thing, and you have the power to work with it and surround yourself with people who will help you understand it and understand your body, and not from a place that like there's something wrong with you, but like your nervous system is talking to you. So
Mhm.
you're anxious. Let's talk about that. You've got parts of you that are trying to rise up and help you. And just to have normal conversations so people don't feel like it's just them.
Mhm. Yeah. And I mean, unfortunately, a lot of us get labeled as certain things at certain times, whether that's through someone of power or just a friend saying something and then you
Yeah.
making that story real. Like I had an asthma doctor when I was young. I had really bad asthma. I was hospitalized twice when I was a kid, and he was kind of just like, "You're never going to heal from this." And then I started reading about breath and breathing and like the human, this vessel, and how to kind of optimize it and reverse all of it, and it's amazing. Like I don't have asthma attacks anymore, and it's and when you can like shift that one story, you realize what are the other stories that I'm telling myself, what are the other identities that I'm carrying on, and are they true, are they not true, and really being curious about that. And when we realize that we can take our power back and really create the life that we want, and again, like there's like a what's the numbers, like 400 trillion to one odds of us being a human on earth, and we're gonna settle for being sick and unhealthy and angry and pissed off. Like, no, like we're gonna take our lives back. So it's really exciting, and you're leading the way. And talking about tools, talk to me a little bit about the creative journaling because you're an artist. You're an artist as well. And I saw a photo of Mac doing the creative journaling and just some of the content of that. And I'd love to know a little bit more about the creative journaling that you do.
Sure. So I think it was like 2014-ish. I discovered Brene Brown.
Hmm.
And she, along with Oprah, did I think it was an 8-week course on creative journaling. And that was really what started kind of opening my eyes. She did pieces where you dive into your story, But it was journaling and it was all, I mean, looking back, it was just like returning to yourself, self-love, but in a creative way. And so many of us, I think everybody is born with creative gifts. And I think we get educated out of them, we get shamed out of them, we get graded out of them, we get compared out of them. And I just felt like that was where I started to reclaim, like, I love to color, I love to draw, I love to journal, I love to paint, I love to play. And so, and again, I was in my 30s, and the society rules, that you've been taught, like, you need to go to work and make a living and raise your kids. It's like, no, I need to freaking play. And this, I didn't know it at the time, but my body told me I love this. And so I didn't know how important it was at the time, and I understand it much differently now. But that was really also where I think I started, us as a family started to embrace the importance of creativity in our home. And so, I remember my husband drew something one time, and I was like, holy cow, how did you do that? And he didn't think it was anything. And so we just started having conversations about how each of us have gifts and each of us are creative in our own way. So for me, the creative journaling helps me not, like, sometimes I just need to, morning page it out and just scribble and scratch and release. But sometimes I really need to be contemplative. How do I contemplative? There it is. Um, and I need color and I need smells and I need music. And so it might start with, like, why is this word? Why do I keep thinking of this word? And then I'll write it out and and then, like, bring colors to it. And what I find is when I slow down and give my body a way to go from my brain through my heart, through my arm to the pen to the paper, a lot of clarity comes in a not intimidating, non-pressured kind of way and in a fun way. I do a talk, a workshop on the four pillars of optimal mental health, and the first one is wellness, and under wellness is journaling, creativity, play, dance, music, silliness. My guys bought me a Barbie a couple of years ago. Like, that's how, like, passionate I am about play, right? And so, yeah, that's where the creative journaling came from. And I started doing groups, and I'll probably do another one this year. Just haven't nailed that down yet, but
Yeah.
it's just such a non-intimidating way to be creative. And, people think you have to be an artist. You don't. If you look at my journals, they're messy. They're not, necessarily Pinterest worthy, but they are in here, like in my heart, right? Because they brought clarity on
Yeah.
something.
That's the best way. That's the best way. I love that.
Yeah.
And you had touched on this. This is actually the question I was going to ask you next. What are the four pillars of optimal mental health?
Sure. So their wellness, and that is really your physical health. So drinking your water as you're doing right now, staying hydrated, understanding the importance of nutrition, learning how to read your body, what you put in your body, how it makes you feel, getting out in nature, journaling, meditating, good sleep hygiene, kind of your basic wellness principles. That's under wellness. And then meaning. So understanding your purpose, understanding you have a purpose, accepting that you're here on this planet for a reason at this very time, and discovering things that light you up. Again, it kind of goes, it kind of builds on each other. So once you really learn to trust your body and to listen, you start to read, like, when does my body light up like a Christmas tree? When does it shrink and feel disdain, and really honoring what your body is telling you. Um, and then the third is connection. So finding your community, finding people who have shared values. Doesn't mean that you only spend time with people who think like you, because I don't think that's great either. But if you have a passion, like, you're an actor and you're an artist, so you need to have some of those people around you, because they understand when you say something. You don't have to give a 3-hour explanation. Doing work together, maybe volunteer work together, feed my starving children, or volunteering somewhere that's important to you, that you share in a community of people that you're making a difference. If you love to run, you have a runners group, like I have a writers group, just different communities, because we're just not meant to do this journey alone. So community is the third one, or I'm sorry, it's connection, is what I call it. And then the last one is healing. So if you're struggling with keeping up with your wellness or with connection, healthy connections, healthy relationships, or finding your purpose, or you're, just struggling in those areas, there's probably something that's stuck that you're not aware of that we can dig up and we can go back and we can heal. And, that can be therapy, coaching, mentorship, lots of different ways. There's lots of different roads on the map on how to heal. And so there's so many resources out there too. But yeah, wellness, meaning, connection, and healing are the four pillars that I focus on.
Have you written a book yet? Question mark.
There's not a few in the tank. Yeah.
Yeah, you genuinely remind me of Brene Brown. I was a big fan, or I am a big fan.
Oh, thank
And
you.
after,
All right,
because,
this interview's over. I'm happy. That's all I needed.
but
I
like
got a
healing,
student one time. I was
yeah.
teaching. It was an in-person class, and she's like, I don't know. I did something. I was talking, and she's like, I feel like I'm being taught by Brene Brown, and I was like, you, my dear, have an A.
That's all you need.
We're
That's all.
done.
I love that.
What
But
a huge
seriously,
compliment. Thank you.
yeah, of course. And you came up with that's just such a testament. One thing that I really wanted to highlight with the four pillars, is community. Because that's something I've experienced the impact of not having it, the impact of having it. Sometimes I have this kind of idea of the difference between loneliness and solitude, and I think you can be lonely in a crowd of 40 people and you're not physically lonely, but you feel really lonely. And then there are
Yep.
times where I'm physically alone, but like I'm in nature, and I call it solitude because I don't feel alone. I feel connected to everything. And I find this just the difference in that, and I just found again the community is one of the things that I've when you're in that pocket and you're with the right people that challenge, inspire, encourage, you're surrounded with love with very similar values, you elevate on another to another level, and it's so amazing. And I guess you shared a little bit about community, but like my question is, what does community mean to you and your relationship with community? And segueing into the Work of Warriors podcast because you're building a community as well. So if you wanted to share on any of that.
Sure. No, thank you. So you made a great point about the difference between loneliness and solitude and connection. And so for me, community is under the pillar title of connection, right? And so for me, connection starts with connection to myself. Again, going back to I am really limited in how I can connect with you if I'm not connected to myself. I'm myself, and I think a lot of people, especially people who have trauma, significant trauma, we learned early on to connect to other people for our safety. Like if I take care of you, then I'm okay. But what we have to learn is I take care of me and I'm okay, and then I can help take care of you. And so for me, community is, you talked earlier about like I struggle with surface conversation. Me too. And I just want to know, how are you? How are you really? How's your heart? What are you working on as far as like living your best life? I don't care what you're doing for a living, but like what are you doing for you to take care of you? I struggle in environments where there's a lot of unhealth or people not doing their work. And so that takes me a lot of work within myself to regulate if I'm around, like if I'm in a community where people aren't aware. But for me, community is people who share values. And, I think there's different communities. My family is my little community. It's my safest space. I'm part of a writers community for people who are writing books about childhood sexual abuse. And I want to build a community where, the Work of Warriors podcast is, everybody thinks warrior like this big, strong, tough person with the whatever that thing is, the spear or whatever, and the armor. But I'm like, okay, a warrior for me, if we could change that definition, a warrior for me is someone who takes care of themselves first so that they can take care of other people. And that's the community that I want to build, where it is normal to say, no, I can't. I'm not feeling my best. Or, hey, I like when we got on this call, like, I'm not feeling my best, but I really want to do this. I've been looking forward to this all week. And to trust each other in that energy, to know that, like, if you show up for me, you're not doing it out of obligation, that you're doing it because you genuinely want to be there. And creating a community where we can help by not having to question other people's motives. And for me, wanting to build a better industry takes people who are willing to be honest and willing to be vulnerable and willing to take care of themselves. And if even if that means telling us no. With the podcast, I've had lots of no's, lots of unanswered emails, and I just respect that. Just okay. It's just not a fit. I don't want anyone showing up like, okay, well, I have to be here. Like, no. If this is, I always ask people, is mental health a passion of yours? Like, are you passionate about mental health for artists? Because if you're not, we don't have to do this, right? I don't want just somebody who's like, let's just say there's a big name celebrity. Like just because they have 3 million followers and they've been in movies and they've won all kinds of awards, like that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone who is passionate about mental health for artists, understand the complexity of the industry, who want to participate in creating a better industry by leading the way. And for my podcast, I say like you don't have to have it all figured out either. Somebody might be 2 days sober and want to talk about it. Let's talk about it. But if you are moving, I don't care if it's 3 inches, if you have moved 3 inches toward taking care of yourself and understanding that mental health is important and it's not a stigma, and we're going to change that with these conversations, then I want to hear from you.
Mhm. That is, you're amazing. That's beautiful. And I think it's real because sometimes, like, if you're going through the darkness, through the cloud, through the storm, and you're listening to someone who maybe has been through what you've been through but is kind of out of it, you almost feel like they're so far away it's hard to almost connect sometimes, versus having someone on who doesn't think they're worthy to share about what they're going through, but they're right where
Yeah.
they are, and that can be more impactful sometimes to someone who's really going through it. And you just never know the impact of, that sharing your stories. We talk about storytelling, so important. And I think podcasting is a really cool thing too, because not that I've even been acting for a long time, but 15 years ago, before social media, before podcasting, the only time we ever really saw celebrities was on the big, massive screen and on the red carpet, where basically they're gods. They're not real humans. They're so above anything. And I remember talking to one director talking about what's different about the industry now is that the movie star is going away, because now we can see behind the curtain. Like now I can listen to podcasts, I can listen to interviews of Andrew Garfield and Viola Davis and Brad Pitt talk about their journey, their struggles, their thousand rejections. And it's like, wait, you're just you're we both bleed red, like we're both human. That's pretty cool. And the ability to kind of start having more vulnerable conversations and access to those conversations, it's really cool. It's really cool. So it's just really cool what you're doing.
Thank you. And I think we're going to see an additional shift because with social media, we're going to get to watch people progress through their careers. Whereas we often, I think we're still in it, where like somebody just all of a sudden pops up, right? Like Jelly Roll just all of a sudden popped up, or an actor, just like, wow, they're in everything. It's like, but if you go back and dig a little bit, it's like it took them, people think, what's the saying? It took me 40 years to become an overnight success.
Mm-hmm.
Like we think it happened overnight, but
Mm-hmm.
they've been working at this for probably a decade plus. And so I think as time goes on, we're going to see more of that. Like, oh, there they go. And we're going to get to watch that, which is really cool. One of the best things I think that came out of the internet and COVID was that we got to see people with their gray hair and, they're without makeup and without all the glitz and glamour. We got to see like, whoa, these are real people. And then we got to watch the struggle of like, wait, they're out of work. They have no money. They can't go on tour. They can't go on set. They can't, and we started, I think, like you said, like they're human, and we got to let them come off of their pedestals. It's not safe to put people on pedestals. It's dangerous for them, it's dangerous for us. And I think we have so much work to do. Sometimes I'll get in the weeds. I don't do it too often. Sometimes I will get in the weeds, especially on TikTok, of like where there's like online bullying, because it just really rattles me that for some reason we think because someone is in public eye, they gave up their right to be treated with respect.
Mm.
And that's a huge passion of mine too.
Yeah, amazing. Oh gosh, Kim, you're
If you
so.
see me fighting on social media,
Mhm.
it'll only be for that.
I love it. I love it. You're so awesome. We talked about the present, we talked about the past a little bit. Now, a vision for the future. When I started asking this question, it was kind of like, yo, give me your dreams, your goals, your action steps. What are you doing? What do you got going on? And then sometimes I was kind of reflecting on my own life, and sometimes there's like part of me in the manifestation I do want to map out and like put things into the universe, but also I kind of like working in silence and not showing people the work, and then showing the result and like working behind closed doors. So you can take this in any direction that you want, but if you have, it could be a mood board, it could be a vision board of colors, of ideas, of things. You talked about the communities that you're bringing together. But anything that you have going on in the future that's really exciting, or a more, like we talked about, what is the saying, the a more beautiful earth, the earth, I forgot the saying, but just the a vision for the future. If you have anything in the books that you want to share.
Sure. So you can't see it, but on either side of me, so I have another monitor that is vertical and it has my vision board on it. And so it has a picture of my podcast. It has a picture of an auditorium because I love public speaking and I want to do more of that. It has pictures of like health and wellness. It has a picture of two people hugging because I committed this year that I need more hugs. And Mac has like been the receiver of a lot of that. It's journaling, healthy things, like a full schedule, and then there's a picture of like a cabin that overlooks a lake with the mountains and like tall, like evergreens in the distance. Because in my mind, that's where I will land, is in that space, but also I envision like tiny cabins around where artists will come to, I mean, it will be nice and it will be luxury-esque, but not, I'm going to just fall all over you and take care of you and pamper you and treat you like you're the best thing that ever lit. It's like, no, you're going to come to heal and you're going to leave all the glam at the airport and you're going to come and really, really be restored by dealing with trauma, by being in community, by, focusing on those four pillars, by being really genuinely cared for as a human being, not a celebrity. So that's my vision for my future. And then on the left, I have it's part of my morning routine. Oh, and I also have like, this is really important. I have my essential oil.
Mhm.
And I have 20 power statements for 2025. And so these are all things that I already did it this morning. I go through and I read every single one of them to just remind myself why I'm here and the power that I have to take care of myself and to have an impact on the world while I am here.
Snaps to that. That's beautiful. You're
Okay.
making it happen.
To
You're making it
to
happen.
answer your question, okay, great.
Yes. Okay. For our final segment, we got a few rapid fire questions. Some of them are a little silly, some of them are a bit more sincere. But again, I
On.
say rapid fire because I think every podcast I listen to, like they do this at the end. But you can take your time with it if you need to. So, Kim, first off, what would you say right now brings you the most joy?
Mm. My people, my animals, and nature.
Great answer. Top four values.
Ooh, integrity, honesty, taking care of myself first, and being generous or impactful.
Hmm. What is your spirit animal?
Uh, I don't know. That's a hard one. I don't know. I love gorillas. Like that's my favorite animal.
Yeah,
But I
awesome.
also like I feel like my dogs, I have two dogs. I feel like they're human. I feel like I'm their spirit animal. I
Mm.
feel like they're in control and they're so good for my nervous system. So I don't know. Spirit animal. I think I would, can I say Phoenix?
Ooh, yeah, that's a great one.
feel like I really, I mean, people have said that to me, people who write me notes say that, and it feels true for me that like I really am like a rising phoenix that has risen from the ashes. So I haven't been asked that in the way you asked me, but yeah, I think it would be a rising phoenix.
Amen. I love that. I second that. What is your favorite quote, if you have one?
Hmm. I have a million. Um, I think on a regular basis, what helps me is um honestly is one more. It's Ed Milet. It's
Mm-hmm.
one more. And it just reminds me one more conversation, one more act of kindness, one more day, one more act of intention. Um, and that's how we have impact. It doesn't have to be done overnight, but I'm a huge fan of quotes all over the place.
Mm-hmm. I love that. What is, I was asked this question, I never know if it's a great question, but there are so many forms of ways that you express yourself. What would you say is your favorite form of expression? Like it could be writing, dancing, creating, storytelling, cooking, could be
It's not cooking.
anything.
You could ask Matt. He no, not cooking. It is probably writing. Writing and well, and speaking.
Mhm.
When
Yeah.
I'm in front of a group of people, I feel really like it terrifies me every time. I'm always like, oh, why did I say yes to this? And then I'm like, it's the best place ever. Like I love to have an impact and to connect with people and help people feel seen, which I guess is probably how I ended up with a podcast.
Hmm. Yeah. Amazing. Now, books are such an amazing tool that we have at our disposal, and I'm sure going through um, schooling where you're learning how to be a therapist, but then also there's like Brene Brown, you have all these amazing people who have written amazing books. What is like one or two books that impacted you like at that particular time that you read it in life?
The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown, for sure. Um, Gosh, I just read Viola Davis's book.
Mhm.
But the most impactful book I think I ever read was The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. That really started my healing journey.
Mhm. And when did you read that?
That would have been probably somewhere like 2012 to 2014-ish.
Hmm.
Yeah, so a minute ago.
That's amazing. Now, what is your, I feel like I know the answer to the question, but what would be your dream collaboration with like on the podcast? Like if you get one guest to be on the podcast that isn't Brene Brown, who would it be?
It's
Like
funny
a
because Brene
celebrity.
Brown would not be my first choice. I do feel like that's more of a peer. Jelly Roll,
Mm,
Bunny, his wife Bunny.
yeah,
Yeah, Jelly Roll.
very cool. Very cool.
Because we have very similar stories. Like he grew up in poverty and around drugs, and he just wants to have an impact. And he's in, policy and not only music. He's doing a lot of things, and we're watching his story play out where he's losing weight. And I think we're gonna get to watch him just become healthier and healthier and healthier. Which is just very exciting because we're getting a front row seat to it, and I think it's going to be really powerful.
Hmm. It's amazing. Okay, Kim, hypothetical situation. You live a beautiful life where you leave such impacts and you bring communities together and you're writing books and you're traveling the world sharing your stories and you live to be 160 years old and you have so many stories to share. But unfortunately, your time is up. Your soul has moved on to the next life or wherever it ends up, and people attend your funeral. What do you want people to say about you at your funeral? What's the legacy that you want to leave behind?
Mm. She made me feel loved, and she had a huge impact on changing the entertainment industry and ending celebrity suicide.
Amazing.
Try to encompass everybody in there.
Yeah, yeah. And then final question. This could be to any young artist or possible even celebrity who's going through, actually let's say it's a celebrity who's achieved everything that we talked about Jim Carrey saying, I wish everyone got famous and successful and became a celebrity so they realize that that's not what they want. But let's say you're talking to a celebrity and they've had all this incredible critical acclaim, but they're kind of going through a really tough time, and it's hard to be able to express their true version of themselves because other people are sharing a lot of narratives about who they think they are and how they think they're supposed to act, and there's a lot of control, and they're just really going through a really dark, tough time right now. What kind of advice would you have for someone like that?
Hmm. First is you're not alone. You're not broken. You're human. Get a coach or a therapist or a community or a mentor, somebody who sees you and knows your industry, and fight for yourself. And you're here for a reason. You're here not only to impact others, but just to live your life in a way that shines for other people. I think sometimes it can be a little pressure when we say, we need you, but you're here just to be you, your authentic you, because it helps us do the same thing.
You're amazing. You're amazing. You're so articulate and just provide so much value. And I mean, for me today, for anyone who's listening, and the millions of people that are going to impact throughout the rest of your life. And for the final, I guess, lastly, we have is, where can our audience members support you? Where can we learn more about you and yeah, support you throughout this journey?
Thank you. Um, so my podcast is The Work of Warriors, and it's everywhere. It's on YouTube and all the popular channels. And my website is my name, kimrapach.com. And I am Kim Rapach on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
Amazing. Kim, I don't want to take up any more of your time. You're amazing. You're such a light. Thanks for making a cool dude in Mac. We shared some pretty cool memories just on set. I'm excited for the world to hopefully see some of the work that we were able to do. But just, you're such a light, and keep shining. Keep on shining.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. After I met you, I went to Mac and I'm like, you need to find your way to Philly and go hang out with that guy.
We will. We will.
Put him on a plane. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for really good questions and normalizing this conversation. It means the world to me to be asked, to be invited, and also just to know that you're doing this good work in the world, and keep going.
Cheers. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Have a beautiful
Thank
day.
you. Okay. Bye.